I want to play a game with you guys today, and it's not a fun game. Well, actually, I think it's kind of a fun game. What if you woke up tomorrow and a major piece of this hobby just vanished? Gonzo, never to be seen again. And not because the market is forcing it out due to sales or a technology change. This is just gone overnight, completely erased from existence. What would actually matter here? And what would we pretend mattered because we've spent so much time and money convincing ourselves it does? I've got 5 scenarios, and some of them I think you guys are going to agree with, and some of them might tick you off a little bit, but I think the answers tell us more about what HiFi actually is, more than any measurement or shootout ever could. So here we go. The first one's easy. Picture this. You wake up tomorrow, and every cable over, let's say, $200 is gone. No AudioQuest Mythical Creature series, no Valhalla cables, no $1,000 power cords. You're left with all the endless options on Amazon, places like Blue Jeans Cable, Monoprice, maybe some mid-tier AudioQuest cables, and of course all the options you could do DIY. These are just going to be flat-out cables with good copper, competent designs, nothing exotic. No cryo-treated cables today, guys. Would it matter? No, and you know it wouldn't. I'm not saying expensive cables sound identical to coat hangers, so don't put that in the comments. I'm saying that the performance delta between a well-made $50 cable and a $5,000 cable is so small that it disappears entirely behind things that'll matter, multitudes more here. That could be room acoustics, speaker placement, and whether you remember to even tow in your mains. The difference exists in the same way that there's a difference between 95 octane and 93 octane fuel. It's technically measurable sometimes, but it's functionally irrelevant for anything the vast majority of people are doing. And here's how you know this is true. A lot, but not all people spending fortunes on cables are also the people that are running $30,000 speakers in untreated rooms that are sitting, 25 feet away from the speakers. The hobby survives this easily. We'd lose some romance, sure. We'd lose the jewelry aspect of it, but sonically, we'd be completely fine. People would just keep listening. So the verdict on this one, we really wouldn't miss it. All right, this one's harder. Every turntable on earth disappears. Every Rega, Technics, VPI, Thorens, Project, they're all just gone. The records are still there, all in their sleeves, still beautiful, still collectible, but there's no way to play them anymore. From a pure sound quality standpoint, we'd honestly be fine. A good digital rig can match or exceed what vinyl does in almost every measurable way. Better dynamic range, no surface noise, no inner groove distortion, no wear over time where essentially every play microscopically does wear out the album. If we're talking about the most accurate reproduction of the original recording, digital wins that argument 9 times out of 10. But here's what we really would lose, and that's the ritual. Playing a record forces you to be present in a way that streaming doesn't. You get up, you choose what you're going to listen to. You pull it from the sleeve, you feel the weight of it in your hands, and you lower that needle, then you just sit down and listen. Not as background, but as the main event. You can't shuffle, you can't skip halfway through because you're bored. You're committed for at least one side, right? That enforced attention, that's not some nostalgic fairy tale here. That's the single most effective on-ramp to deep listening this hobby has ever had. And if you take that away, you take away the thing that recruits people who care. The thing that makes music feel like an event instead of just wallpaper. I also think, and I really do mean this, we'd lose the best argument we have that this hobby is more than the gear. Vinyl proves that people value experience over accuracy. They choose these pops and crackles because the whole thing feels better. Take that away and HiFi becomes more like lab equipment. It's just more clinical and less human. So the verdict on this one, the hobby survives, but it becomes less of what did make this special. This is where I'm gonna lose some of you, but hear me out. Every tube amp on earth disappears. Macintosh, Rogue, Prima Luna, they're gone. You're just left with solid state at this point. All the Class A, B that you can handle, and Class D if you're feeling a little bit spicy. So no glowing glass bottles that give you that nice warm feeling inside. They're just out of the picture. And from a technical perspective, this doesn't really matter at all, right? Tube amps measure worse, they have higher distortion, lower damping factor, worse signal to noise ratio. Every objective measurement says they're a step backwards from what the solid state, options that we have today achieved decades ago. The only reason they still exist is because people like how they sound, which is another way of saying they like the inaccuracies tubes introduce. But here's the thing, I do get it. I've sat in front of tube gear that made me feel something solid state didn't. Not because it was more accurate, it obviously wasn't, right? But because the way that it rounded off transients, the warmed up mid-range that it offered, it was just easier to sit with for hours at a time. It added something, you can call it coloration, you can call it musicality. Everyone loves that term, right? But the effect is real. And more than that, tube amps are beautiful. They're furniture, they're kind of like a sculpture. They glow. They feel special in a way that black boxes with heat sinks just never will. Maybe we should care about what just comes out of the speakers, but that's just not the case because, well, we're not robots. The verdict on this one, I think we'd miss it more than we should. Maybe. Not vinyl, not CDs, none of the formats, just the physical retail space where you buy it. Every record store just closes overnight, locks the door one day, and it never opens back up. You can still buy CDs, vinyl, all of that online, direct from labels, wherever, but there's no store to walk into, no bins to flip through, no Saturday afternoon stops just to see if something catches your eye. That's also going to mean no recommendations from the guy behind the counter or the casual conversation you might pick up from another enthusiast. This one hurts worse than losing some of the others in a different way. Because here's what record stores do that nothing else in hi-fi does. They create physical, social, shared spaces around music. You walk in and there's teenagers next to retirees, and everyone's having the same conversation and can uniquely relate with each other across generations. Maybe you swing in and someone's playing something over the shop system that you've never heard before. You ask what it is, you buy it, and this is how people fall into this. Streaming is solitary, online shopping is transactional, but a record store is communal in that it's kind of like the place where the hobby reproduces itself, where the next generation gets recruited not by spec sheets, but by seeing other people who actually care, which is really hard to replicate. And think about it like this. If the pipeline dries up, you're left with all the algorithms and the targeted ads, and that's not really how you build passion. That's just kind of how you build consumers. I do personally wish I made it into more stores, honestly, but like a lot of you, I find my connections on platforms like this, just chatting with the community. So I guess this is my plug here. Send a subscription this way if you'd like. I'd truly appreciate it. I mix reviews and topics like this, and I'd love to have you join a great community here. As for the verdict on this one, I do think it would hurt. I don't think we have all that many music shops out there at this point. I don't think it would impact the amount of media sold, really, just because there's not that many stores, but I do think it would damage the foundation of this hobby. Last one, and I think this one might be the most important one, even though it doesn't feel like it should be. Every headphone on earth disappears. Your AirPods, your Sennheiser HD600s, your planar magnetics, your Focal Utopias, whatever else you have, it's just gone. You can only experience music through speakers in a room. And I know what a lot of you are thinking here. Good, right? That's how it should be anyways. Headphones are a compromise. Music is supposed to fill the space. All the other things that you could easily say here. But here's the reality. Headphones are probably the single most important delivery mechanism for the next generation of this hobby. Most people under 30 don't have a dedicated listening room. They don't have $5,000 to spend on speakers. They live in apartments with roommates, or they're in dorms, or they're just in coffee shops trying to do work and they want a way to listen to music. The only way they can experience this hi-fi quality audio today is through headphones, realistically. Not because they necessarily prefer this, but because it's what's actually possible in their lives at this moment. You take the headphones away, and I feel like you might be cutting off the entire entry point for people that would eventually buy speakers. The high school kid with HD600s, he's the guy who in all likelihood buys speakers 5 years from now when he gets his first apartment. But that path might not even exist without headphones. And beyond that, there's something headphones do that speakers can't. They do give you privacy, not just acoustic privacy, but more like kind of emotional privacy. The ability to fully disappear into music that's kind of impossible if you're sharing a space with other people. I'm not saying headphones are better. They're not, in my opinion, I guess. My preference is speakers. Music in a room is the fuller, more realistic experience, and I truly believe that. But they're accessible in a way that speakers just aren't. They're portable, they're affordable, and they meet people where they actually are instead of where the hobby wishes they were. Take them away, and I think you lose an entire pipeline, or at least a very large portion of the new listeners who would have eventually graduated into the bigger stuff. You lose the format that makes hi-fi possible for people who don't have the money or space for the ideal setup. And you lose something genuinely intimate that speakers, for all the strengths that they do have, just can't replicate. So the verdict on this one, the hobby doesn't just shrink, we potentially lose a portion of this generation altogether. So here's what these 5 scenarios actually tell us. The things we genuinely miss, the turntables, the record stores, headphones, They're not the things that measure best. They're the things that actually make us feel something. The things that build ritual, that create community, they make the act of listening feel like it really matters. It's also the things that meet people where they are instead of demanding they become someone else first. And then the things that wouldn't matter, things like expensive cables. Those are the things we spend the most time arguing about online, which is kind of strange, isn't it? I think that gap is the entire story of modern hi-fi. We've built a hobby where the technical stuff is easier to debate, it's easier to quantify, easier to sell even, but the stuff that actually holds it together is the intangible things. The experience, the culture, the accessibility, the feeling that you're doing something that it's worth slowing down for. We don't slow enough down during the day, and listening to music is one of those opportunities where you can really do something like that. This isn't a gear hobby, it never was. It's a music hobby that happens to involve gear. It's perfectly fine to like gear. I personally do, I like it a lot. But the stuff that keeps it alive isn't the better cables, it's better rituals, better gathering points, better on-ramps for people who can't afford to start at the top. I'm Matt Kuykendall. Let me know in the comments how you feel about all of this. If you have any suggestions of your own, just feel free to let me know. I'd love to talk about it. And if you're still watching, I totally appreciate it. You're a real one. Please consider subscribing and joining the community. Lots more reviews and discussions like this on the way. Take care. Talk soon. Later.